Bring out time.
Okay. Do I have, it looks like I have the ability to share, right?
Let me make sure. Yes, you are co-host, so you should be able to share and do all the things.
Okay. So you guys are seeing that? New rules? No?
I see it.
You see it? Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for popping on this morning. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the new rules. As you know, on August 17th, we started the new process of business practice that was driven by a lawsuit that created a federal court order due to a settlement that was done by several of the larger brokerages, MLSs, and the largest being NAR. So the business practices that we're changing are nationwide and they're affecting everybody. So we just wanted to check in with you today and find out a little bit about what's going on, see what you're seeing out there in the marketplace, see if you're still, able to charge a storm and be in the forefront of the changes. One of the, hold on a second here, let me just minimize that. So before we get started, I just wanted to give a couple of quick disclaimers. That seems to be the order of the day. First of all commissions and fees are negotiable. So right now, some of the people that are on the call are from, some of the people that are on the call are from different brokerages and everything. So if we do use real life examples, we want to pay attention to the fact that all commissions and fees are negotiable. No laws or association of realtors has set or recommended fees or terms in the contract, that each franchise is individually and independently owned and operated. And if you have any questions or if you want specific strategies or you want to talk about commission strategies or anything like that, first check your office policy and guideline manual. You can call me up and we'll be doing additional trainings in small groups and various other roundtables and things so that we can get you up to speed with that and answer your specific questions. But you guys know that I'm always a phone call away. So what I wanted to accomplish in today's session is kind of review the practice change resource guide that was created, show you some of the things that are on there that are at your fingertips so that we can identify how things are affected out in the marketplace, the do's, the don'ts, where do we put this on a contract or where do we put that on a contract? And I'll cycle through that rather quickly. I'll go over some of the key documents that have been changed and talk a little bit about that. And then I'd like to, with you, discuss the process of listing compensation, discuss the process of selling compensation, and then talk about real world scenarios and best practices without really referencing specific commissions or anything, knowing that they're not all set. Then have questions and answers and thoughts on the current marketplaces, what's working for you guys, what you're seeing out there. So the first part that I wanted to go through, and I don't know if the screen changed when I did that, but do you guys see that spreadsheet in front of you? Or is it still on the old one?
Still on the old one.
Okay. All right. I've not mastered how to actually switch through that as quickly as I'd like, but well, you can read that while I'm trying to figure this out. All right. How about now? Are you guys seeing a spreadsheet?
Yep, we see it now.
Okay, perfect. All right. You can edit that for later use. I'm kidding. And if you guys want to ask any questions or anything through this really, we want to make this interactive, but we want to try to get through some of the stuff up front first. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the comments section, and then Brittany or Michael, whoever's, kind of monitoring that, will get us back to that to answer all your questions. So here's a spreadsheet that I created in the beginning of this whole process of realizing that we've got some major changes that are coming up. And I wanted it to serve several purposes. I wanted to give you all the information about what's going on, all the links to how you can do a deeper dive if you want to, all the things that were impacted by it, put on, you know, the major changes in our business practice, and just kind of take you through the whole thing. So quickly, I'll step through this. Up in this section in the upper left are why we got where we are today. There are various recordings from NAR, from PAR, and all you have to do is click on one of them and it brings up that webinar and you can watch that. So I tried to, everything in here that obviously is a different color, like blue or red, is a link. So here's a public explanation that you can click on if you're having trouble communicating to your buyers and sellers as to what the changes are, why they took place, things of that nature. Then I dropped down into what exactly is it impacting for us? And so I started by putting the comprehensive training guidelines for new forms. So there's a booklet that they came out with. As you guys know, in PAR, they have every single document on Pennsylvania Association of Realtors website. You can go under standard. They have every single form, and then not only do they have every single form, but they also have guidelines for preparation and use for every single form. So I often told agents as I brought them in or trained them that if you want to be the best at negotiating, if you want to be the best at how you practice your trade, you can grab an agreement of sale, read it from end to end, look at the guidelines of preparation and use, and I promise you that you will know more than probably the 95% of agents that are out there as far as what all the little things are. In the guidelines for preparation and use, they also give tips and tricks, not tricks, but tips, pro tips for how to apply your trade and what, you know, can get you where you want to go faster. So I strongly recommend that. So in here, because they weren't at the time, they didn't have a preparations guideline in use for every single form because the forms were changing so rapidly. They created one that has all of the different forms that were impacted by the new business practices. Excuse me 1 second. Shut my door.
Excuse me.
So I'm sorry, somebody had a question?
Oh, no, no, sorry.
It's okay. All
The
right.
buyer
So
that-
over here are the buyer forms. And if you want to see what was changed, you click on those and it'll show you like the changes that happened between the last version and the new version. It'll show you, if you click here, the actual updated version. And then if you look under here, there's the guidelines for using the buyer agency contract. And that's for every single one of these forms. So we have buyer forms, seller forms, the notice of policy changes, and down to transactional licensee. So everything that was impacted is right in that section right there. Then I started as the business practices and what we needed to do started coming out. I started on the right side, which would be more practical business practice change things. So just some informational stuff about existing buyer contracts. So when you have an existing buyer contract, this is what you have to do. You have to have the notice of policy change signed and have a new BAC written. And that's only temporary. When you have existing listing contracts, you have to have the NPC signed and only write a new contract if the terms are changed. And that actually does apply to the buyer agency as well. And then the existing clients, your buyers and sellers that are under contract, you only need to use the MLS form for those. And then going forward, the Bright form that they came out with, which is right here, has to be given to every buyer and every seller client after 8/14, and that actually should be 8/17. So changing in real time. There are also some other things that I put in here that I think will help with your business practices. For instance, there is a comparison between the way things were done and the way they should be now. these are, you know, all the changes that are taking place with Bright. So it's a short explainer. And then here's the total MLS rules book. So that's for everything in the MLS. If you have any questions for it, there's some videos and updates that go along with that. There's Bright settlement changes that are in there. There's the Bright rule comparison report. There's a listing flow chart, which is actually kind of neat, where it tells you like what things, the way they used to happen, or what's going on with the new listing agreement, you know, enter it within 2 days and all this other stuff. So it's just, you know, hopefully it's something that's beneficial to everybody in that respect. And then there's the MLS office exclusive form. If you have a seller that does not want to market their property on the MLS for a particular reason, profile listing sheet. And then down here, I put in settlement talking points. So as I came across documents, I actually put links in there and I connected those documents so you can have those. So I know that we were always talking about value and how to keep value. One of the ways is when you go for a listing, because everybody was concerned about what am I going to say, what am I going to do, and that document is in there as well. So you can look through those. There's one for home sellers, one for home buyers that helps explain what happened, and then about writing buyer agreements 101. As well as class action notice discussion points. So the lawsuit that occurred is a class action notice. And it is possible that some of your past clients will actually get letters in the mail talking about the settlement, where they pay out the monies that they've collected minus the attorney fees to all of the people that respond to the class action suit. I would not go out and openly promote it or anything like that, but just be aware of it in case anybody does get something like that. A reminder about social media, and I think we're almost past that point. If I had to take a guess, as far as jumping in on conversations on social media about what's going on in the market, if it's good or bad for realtors, how it's hurting us or helping us or hurting buyers. It's just best to as a professional, it's just best not to comment and get involved on those. And there are several different groups and websites that kind of thrive on that. And it's better to just keep moving forward. And that's what's going to make us successful as we proceed. And then the big warning under here for buyers is, as of 8/17, you cannot, under any circumstances, show a home, and it does not include open houses if you're doing an open house, to a buyer unless you have either an exclusive buyer agency contract or a non-exclusive buyer agency signed before touring any home. So that's the form, and it's available to you guys. There's a QR code, I believe, on our internal websites, on our Facebook pages. We put that up there, and get them while they're hot, right? So I'm going to switch to some other part here. Does anybody have any questions while I'm switching to the next part? Okay. All right. So where is it? Good question, huh? So you guys see a document in front of you, the notice of policy changes?
Not yet.
Sure. Okay.
I think you have to share again.
Do I? Okay, hold on a sec. Yeah, I'm not. That is something that I am going to have to do better on. How about there?
There we go.
Okay, good. Okay, so all those documents were shown on that spreadsheet, but I wanted to go through every single document in the PIR library. I'm kidding. I just want to go through some of the main ones and only parts of the main ones that may be of concern. So the notice of policy changes is a document that's going to be temporary, and we may be coming to a close on that rather quickly because it's only for people that were not under contract during the time that we switched over on the 17th. And this was supposed to, and listings that you had that hadn't gone under contract either. So this is a document that hopefully we won't see for a long time. And it just says, it tells the client about the changes that are there were changes implemented in August of 2024. And it talks about cooperative compensation and how some sellers have listing contracts that authorize it. That everything, again, is not set by that, all fees are negotiable, and that if they want to continue to offer seller concessions, they can continue to offer seller concessions. So again, it's not so much that the way that we do business has to change. It's the way that we have to be transparent and have the conversations. So what I'm finding, and you guys can confirm or dispute this, but what I'm finding is it's kind of like business as usual, like we always had. So sometimes these things happen and it becomes like an overwhelming, oh my gosh, the whole business is changing and everything. It's just, they're just asking us to do something that we've always done, which is to be transparent about our fees, to have those conversations up front, and to do what's in our client's best interest, whether it's a buyer or a seller. So this document, hopefully that'll go away. The next document is probably one of my least favorite documents in the world, in any industry probably, and that's the Bright MLS Disclosure and Residential Seller Landlord document. It's something that we have to, by MLS rules at this point, have to present and have signed by every single client, whether it's a seller or a buyer. So why do we have to do this? Well, it's part of the same reason that our forms changed and everything like that. It's just to reiterate and meet the changes that were dictated in the settlement agreement. So they're trying to do the same things that we are in a realtor perspective, but they're doing it from the MLS perspective. And just, for the benefit of trying to increase their business, they also have information about how great Bright is and how it reaches more people and how it nets sellers higher prices for the sale of their home. And they're right. But so it just goes through and it says that they support an open, transparent market, that it makes it to all of us being subscribers, all agents in the area. And it just talks again about how amounts are not set by law, trade associations, Bright, and they're fully negotiable, and how in a purchase offer for a seller covering closing costs, the broker fees, if you're a seller or landlord, you can choose to cover a broker cost or anything like that. So it's just the same thing that we're doing on some of our other documents, but it's reiterating them. Here's where the clients sign. Oops, that doesn't work well. Here's where the clients sign, whether it's a seller or the buyer, they just initial that. So again, their information goes at the top, and this part at the top, and that's why I drew that line across, is for the buyers and the sellers. But when you're presenting this to a buyer, it gets kind of weird when you drop below that line, because those are how the sellers want their property to be advertised and marketed. So buyer stuff on the top, seller stuff on the top and bottom. So when they get to the bottom, they essentially have to pick whether or not they're going to share their home's information on the open market, or whether they're not going to share it on the internet. So it's one or the other for those. Then the third line, and they just initial there. And the third line is if you're having them in coming soon status, it gives the date of when it's coming soon. So I know that we used to write that at the bottom of listing contracts, and you still can, but on this form is where they're supposed to put like what date they want it to come on the market. And then the bottom one, which I'm sure they put at the bottom for a reason, is for office exclusives. So office exclusives are when your seller, for one reason or another, does not want to market their property on the MLS and to everybody. And that means that we, in our offices, get to share that information together, and we can market it to ourselves and the agents in our office, but not further than that. So that's an office exclusive, and there's another form that goes along with that if you do. I showed you that if you have a listing agreement, that bright, that's on that spreadsheet. A rule date and update comparison report. Here is the document that you have to have done if you're doing an office exclusive. And this one basically says, I understand that it's not smart to not advertise it on Bright. I understand that it's not smart to put it on Bright. I understand. So there's like 4 questions or 5 questions that says that they're not going to probably get that there's studies that show that they get more money advertising it on the MLS, that all the real estate agents are not going to be able to see it, that it's not going to be published or syndicated out to thousands of websites. And then after all that, if they still are only interested in having an office exclusive, and there's reasons for that, if they want to just advertise it minimally, if they don't want a ton of showings, if they want to kind of put it out there as a whisper listing, or one that's, if you find a buyer, great. If you don't, that's okay with them. And that's where they would initial down here. So they have to kind of initial each line saying that they understand, and that they're being told that it doesn't cost anything to be on Bright and all these other reasons, but that's where they would do it. So any questions about office exclusives? And I'm not in the view where I can see if you raise your hand, so I'm not looking at you guys. All right, the next one is a listing contract. And that essentially, I just wanted to bring attention to the fact that we can write a listing contract up to a year. We can't go beyond that. And then down, oops, I guess I can't move that around, but at the bottom part of it, that's where it talks about your broker fee. So I just wanted to spend a second on what happens when you're sitting there taking the information for the listing. So the part that goes into 5B, which is the broker fee, is your broker fee. So if you have the conversation with the seller that says, hey, would you like to offer cooperative broker compensation? Then that would be your fee plus whatever the cooperative broker compensation is that you're going to offer to other agents. So for instance, if your broker fee is $5,000 and they want to offer $3,000 to somebody that's coming in, then your total $8,000 would go on this line, because as the broker and cooperative broker compensation, the money is coming from us, not from the seller. And that's the big distinction as we go through these changes. So you have to add into your fee whatever they're offering to the seller if you're doing cooperative broker compensation. Does that make sense? I can't hear you nod either.
So
right.
far, so good.
Okay, very good.
I'll wait on. I do have one in the chat. Give me one.
Okay.
It's not pulling up for me.
Okay, while Brittany's pulling that up, I'll just go over just below here. That stayed the same in that very last line. It says blank of broker's fee is earned and due at signing of the listing contract. That's when you collect a fee while you list the contract. And I would recommend that we talk about that offline if you're thinking about making that part of your business practice. But that's when you collect a fee up front.
The question in the chat was just needing a link, and Chris Quintana provided that link in the chat. So if you don't have a link to that spreadsheet, it's in the chat. Thanks to Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. This is page 2, the next page. So on the first page of the listing contract, this is where we put our stuff. The listing agent puts their information in there and would include just like business as usual, before you would include like your total fee if some of it or a portion of it is going to be offered to another agent, and that portion is identified right down in here anyhow. So just like it was before. In addition to that, they put seller concessions, which I keep forgetting, I can't raise that. Seller concessions is the same thing as seller assist was. So they changed the name of that. There's cooperative compensation and there's seller concessions that the buyer can pay. Seller concessions, there's a space in Bright that they allow it. I'd be careful with that. That would be for like if somebody says, you know, seller is willing to give $1,000 carpet allowance or something like that. Because there's so many moving parts going on, you may want to use that as part of the negotiation. But what I fear is that people will start putting start mixing it up and putting in cooperative broker compensation as a dollar amount in that section. So just be careful about that. So seller concessions are over and above what they're offering for cooperative brokering, if they're offering anything, and should be directed to the buyers, so by the seller. So in here, there's a default that says, in addition to cooperating compensation offered by broker, if any seller is willing to consider negotiations in which buyer may request seller concessions unless otherwise noted here. So the contract is set up as a default so that negotiations can be had. I don't see a ton of opportunities or I don't think that a lot of sellers are going to say, no, I don't want to cooperate unless they're already giving cooperative compensation. But that's what I mean by there's so many different moving parts. So better to leave it open and just let the contract happen and the negotiations happen as it occurs. Make sense? Okay. Wanted to talk for a second about the cooperative broker compensation agreement. They changed it where now they put a paragraph in here about arbitration. And that's just trying to reaffirm that there might be multiple contracts that are out there with buyers, but the buyer that is the procuring cause is the one that should get paid. And arbitration is the mechanism that is used to challenge procuring cause between realtors. So we're not going to talk about that today or anything, but they did add that portion to it. We had a conversation among the leadership group, and we determined that although the cooperative broker compensation agreement does say that it's not to be used as an addendum within the same brokerage, we think that it's a good idea to do that anyhow, is to use that. So if there are two agents in our office that are doing a deal, because we just feel that for the extra 30 seconds that it takes to confirm that or get it in writing, that sets the expectations and clarifies it so that there are no issues going forward. As I said, there's so many moving parts, and there's going to be so many conversations, some that are verbal and some that are written, that it's just best to be crystal clear. And that's just a brokerage policy, that to just memorialize it, because the last thing that we would ever want to do is have to referee and disappoint one or the other party that had a misunderstanding about compensation. So,
Hey, Scott, can you hear me? It's Kim.
yes. Hi, Kim.
Hey, so I just had a listing and interesting, multiple agents they sent this to me, prior to them coming to see the home because they wanted to know
That's right.
what the co-op was. And of course, it was done through text or email, but some of them literally sent this to me to fill in.
Yeah, and that's a good business practice in this environment that we're in now. The reason being that, and we'll talk more about this later, but if you submit an offer, like in the past, submitting an offer, you were not allowed to include your compensation in the offer. Now it's completely on the other side. But again, with so many moving parts, when is it possible for a conversation to change based on the offer that comes in? You know what I mean? So we'll look at both sides of that in just a few minutes. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the cost sheets. This goes for buyers and sellers. there's so many changes that are taking place now through the negotiations that what you start out with when you write an offer for a buyer probably or may not end up being exactly what it was before, because now that compensation is being negotiated throughout that, and it's somewhat uncertain, your buyer's costs can change wildly if they have to pay 3% of the price of the home. Or a seller who doesn't want to offer anything might end up offering something through the negotiation. So I just wanted to say that I foresee us doing a lot more cost sheets for our buyers and sellers. Picture getting a multiple offer sheet thing for multiple offers that come in that are all over the board, and you work that out. Well, you're gonna have to probably figure out the best one and then create a cost sheet for that. So your sellers, so when they get to the settlement table, they have a reasonable estimate and expectations as to what their net proceeds are gonna be as well. Just comment on that. I wanted to just go over the two things that, in addition to the consumer's notice, the bright MLS sheet, when you meet somebody before you show them a home, you also have to, those two items and one of these has to be signed before you can take a new client through a home. And I'm sure we've got anecdotal, feet on the street information about that, which we'll go through in just a minute. But I just wanted to go through the two contracts. So consumer notice, bright MLS sheet, the non-exclusive buyer agency, which I put first, although my first presentation is going to be the exclusive buyer agency contract. But have one of these with you. My business practice, I have a stack of them now that are out in my car that I take with me. But this one is different than an exclusive buyer agency in a couple of different ways. The first one is you're used to probably having everybody check no here that says, do you have another written agreement with another broker? Well, now, since people are doing non-exclusives or not doing it correctly and jeopardizing themselves, the brokerage and realtors as a whole, then there could be multiple of these out there. There could be one person that has 7 different agents running around looking for properties for them. So if they're all non-exclusive. So that could be a yes, and very well maybe. This also does not have it has a start date, but it doesn't have an end date like an exclusive buyer agency contract. So it's property specific, and it says right down there that buyer and broker agree that this contract is not time limited, but applies only to the properties listed below, if any, and any other properties introduced or shown by buyer to broker after the signing of this contract. So basically, this one is just for property. So what would you do if you had somebody that wanted to see 5 homes and they weren't all in the same day? So you'd add every time you showed them a house, you'd add it to it, have them initial or sign up until your tolerance of saying, okay, I've done enough, and now we should, formalize our relationship and let me represent you. So, and then your fees go down at the bottom, just like they always do. There are iterations of touring agreements that are out there that I've seen since it started. And I can just tell you that some of them don't meet the state requirements, and some of them don't even meet general requirements because they're not identifying specific fees, which is completely against what the settlement is. So again, this is for transparency, to identify your fees up front so that your buyers know what they're getting into. And I'm not going to read all that paragraph and everything. And here's an advance fee retainer, which is sort of like the listing getting paid up front. There may be some people that are doing schedules of what they collect from their buyers and when they collect it and everything. All I would say with that is just be very careful and make sure that we talk about that before you institute something like that into your business practices. Because from a processing standpoint, we need to iron that out as well. There's the exclusive buyer agency. You guys all know that. How long can you write a buyer agency contract for? There's no time limit. Listings a year, but there's no time limit on a buyer agency. And that didn't change. It's always been like that. Down at the bottom, though, it has the two parts where if a seller is represented by a broker and if seller is not represented by a broker, typically I don't even want to say typically, whatever your fees are, they go in there. And that's the same. Here are some of the things that I was showing you earlier on the spreadsheet, which is for home buyers, there's a description of what the settlement means for them. So it basically can give you talking points if you're stuck a little bit, or if you don't quite have your flow down yet. So it's always good to read these things. There's a ton of information, again, on social media where they're like, let's show you how it exists in the new era of, the lawsuit. I would stay away from those and stay closer to the NAR, PAR recommendations, because there's people that are out there that are, just going rogue a little bit, and they're giving you their opinions on what they feel the settlements are. And for me, I want to take it from somebody that's represented by an attorney, and that would be PAR or NAR. So here's one of the documents that they can give you for that. The agreement of sale. I only really have one thing to say about that, because there's really only one change on it. And that is on page 2, there is the seller concessions, and they're broken into buyer broker fee and closing cost assistance. And this is what I was saying, where we weren't allowed to do this before August 17th. But here is where, okay, so let me just get back to the co-broke compensation. If, like Kim was talking about, if somebody's offering co-broke compensation, the first thing is to find out if they are. And if they are, try to memorialize it if you're getting close to writing an offer. Then you ask yourself, is that enough to cover your fee? And if your fee is higher than that, then there's only 2 resolves to get your full fee, and that would be to either have the seller pay it or the buyer pay it. So if there's a broker fee that's being offered by the other brokerage that covers your compensation on your buyer agency contract, you're done. Business as usual. Get the CBC, the cooperative broker compensation form signed, and you're done. These are zeros then. If you need to collect any dollars or any percent, this is what you use. So it's CBC or this, but not both. So that's one of the things that's been showing up a lot in conversations is, and I'm not sure, I sense, or I believe that it's probably an agent just trying to make sure that they can get paid. So even when somebody's offering a cooperative broker compensation, they're also putting it on here. So they're doubling it up. 2 things about that. If it exceeds what your buyer agency contract is, you're not going to get paid that anyhow. So where does it go? And that's rhetorical. But if you get the CBC signed, then the seller is going to be paying, then they're not going to be paying it because they're already capped at what they're paying their broker. So if the broker's not going to pay it out, and you're not going to collect it from the seller, because it'll be more than what your BAC is. That was a little convoluted. Anyhow, so that's where you would request it. This has to do with the agent. This has to do with your client. And the percentages that go in for an agent do not count against any caps on types of loans and seller help, which is now known as closing cost assistance, or in a broader term, seller concessions. So if they need 6% for a USDA loan in order to make the deal, then you can have 6% in here. If somebody needs $15,000 to pay their agent because the buyer can't pay it, it goes in here. So if that would not compile to make it invalid for the loan. Okay. And guess what? That's the last form there. So let's see if my practice paid off and I can switch it to the other thing again. I get to see that there still are people out there. All right.
We have a question in the
Oh,
chat from
okay.
Kelly. It says, do I need another form if I negotiate my commission down from what's on my buyer's contract to what the seller is offering?
So the question is, if, let's say somebody's offering $5,000 and your buyer agency now wait a minute, say that again. I'm trying to do this in dollars and it just doesn't flow as easy.
No worries. Do I need another form if I negotiate my commission down from what's on my buyer's contract
Okay,
to
on the
match
buyer's
what the
side.
seller's offering? Yeah.
Gotcha. The answer is yes, with a caveat, like it would be the buyer agency. There's a change, what is it? There's a change in terms to the buyer agency contract. Yeah, I think it's CBA or something like that's one I don't know offhand. But yes, I mean, you could do that if you want to reduce it, but keep in mind that if that offer is not accepted, if you do it for that offer and it's not accepted, are you going to go back and change it back up? So you could just let's say that the co-broke is offering $3,000 and your buyer agency is $5,000. You can accept the 3 through a co-broke compensation and not ask your buyer to pay it, but you probably should, if it's accepted, drop it down so that your buyer is reaffirmed that you're not going to charge them the full amount. You know what I mean? Because contract will still say that you have the right to charge them more. So most people would want the reassurance of knowing that they're not going to pay that in addition or be tricked or whatever. Does that make sense? No?
Oh, she said understood. Thank you.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay. All right. So, any other questions while we're at it?
And feel free to hop off mute, turn your camera on if
Heck
you do
yeah.
have a question. We'd love to see who's speaking, and it's much more engaging when cameras are on, for sure.
No?
There we go. Some are turning on.
All right. Awesome. Very good. All right. So, let me just get back to this so that we can get to your questions. How are we doing on time, Britt? Quarter after 12?
Good. It's 12,
We good?
12:13. Yep.
Excellent. Okay, here we go. All right. So again, just to recap, cooperating broker compensation as a seller agent, you want to remember that your fee, if seller is not offering the cooperative broker compensation, like what would your fee be if the seller is not offering cooperative broker compensation, but is willing to negotiate? So in that part where you're setting your fee, that's what I was talking about on the listing contract. So let's say that your percentage, that you're listing the house and your percentage is 10%, and they're not offering any co-broke compensation, then that's fine. But let's say that they want to offer 5% compensation for a co-broke compensation, then you would have to change yours to 15%, right? Because now you're paying that. They're paying you, but you're paying that. So you have to up your fee to include what the seller is offering for cooperative broker compensation. So don't get caught just putting in what your fee. You can do it one of two ways. You can either have that conversation in full with your seller up front and say, are you thinking, here's what the benefits are of it. Here's what would happen if you get offers coming in, and if there's not that, they're going to, likely be asking for it. So you can go one of two ways. You can either offer it, and sometimes maybe that'll hold you to a better negotiation because that's already out of the way, and then you can just work with the offer. Or you can just let it roll in. And some buyers may be willing to pay their agent without asking you to pay it. So what would you like to do? Well, I think it's a good idea to, offer some comfort. Great. So what I'm telling us as agents is just make sure that you change that on your listing contract if you didn't already come in with that in mind. Make sense? Okay. The other thing as a seller agent is you want to establish a communication practice with the seller. So are they willing to negotiate? What's a maximum level if they want you to know? Or do you want to review it with all offers? So it's infinitely better to have that conversation up front when you're talking to the sellers, so you get all that stuff out of the way. Last thing you want is to, be marketing the property and be calling them, every couple of hours to ask them questions about, well, would you do this? Would you do that? What do you want? That kind of thing. So just try to set the expectations up front. And once again, keep in mind that what I'm seeing for best results is business as usual, where the sellers do offer a co-broke compensation. I think that's the preponderance of the listings that are out there. And when I'm out there as a buyer agent and I'm calling to find out if they're offering it, it's pretty predictable, believe it or not. And of course, nothing's set, nothing, but the most of the people that are listing houses, the sellers see the benefit in doing that. So, and maybe that'll change, maybe it won't. The other thing is, like I keep going back to, is update your fee if the seller's offering to compensate the co-broke agent. So, and send the CB forms to this is as a seller agent, send the cooperative broker compensation forms to the co-broker like right away. So as I'm out on the road, as I set up showings, I'm starting to get like emails or text from them. By the way, it's blank percent for a co-broke, and they're getting it out of the way and getting it so that you can make better decisions. So, and that's probably, like Kim was saying, that's probably in a the best case scenario, the best way to help your buyer too. Because if you're standing in a house and they're like, oh gosh, I really like this, I wonder if I can afford it or whatever, and you don't know if they're offering cooperative broker compensation, then it could severely impact their ability to even purchase that home. So I think communication, and from our perspective as listing agents, I think it's really great to set up an internal system. I've gotten texts with links that go to their entire brokerage that has the compensation on it for the different properties. And or as a listing agent, maybe you have a system now that when you get a request for a showing and it's approved, you put them into your phone so you have them in case they call, to talk to you about an offer. Then they're already in your phone, and maybe you can send them a nice little intro text. Hey, thanks for showing my house. By the way, seller is not offering any co-broke compensation, or they are. And that way it helps streamline the process, sets expectations up front, and it just keeps the communication going. And then as a seller agent, you want to watch out for the line 25 in section 3A on the agreement of sale, which is, are they asking for seller help, or are they asking for commission, or the seller to pay commission and all those other things. So just have to pay a little more attention to that section going forward. Use a multiple offer summary sheet. If you get multiple offers, that's going to be critical in making sure that you work to find out the best deal, because now we have added components. So we've got the component of, well, are they asking for a portion or all of their buyer agent commission? And are they asking for regular seller help? And I know that I should get used to saying seller concessions, but are the buyers asking for seller concessions, that kind of stuff. So, and then again, update the seller net sheet for any and all changes that go through. As a buyer agent, some of the things that you want to consider, first and foremost, is a listing broker offering co-broke compensation? If they are, get the CBC done, and you do it before the offering. Scenarios have occurred where people have said, yeah, we're offering X% or X dollars, and people write the offer and send it, and then it's crickets, and they don't get the CBC back. So now what? Now it's an ethical issue if you don't get the CBC signed because they told you, but it would be better if you had it in a text, an email, or best yet would be the CBC, the Cooperative Broker Compensation Form. So that way there's no misunderstandings, no hard feelings, no anxiety while you're waiting for your offer to be considered and returned, wondering if the Cooperative Broker Compensation is going to come back or not. So, and if they say no, then you speak to your buyer. If you ask if they're offering it and they say no, you speak to your buyer about including it on the agreement of sale. Your buyer's got to be kind of on board with that too. So, and you let them know you're doing that to prevent them from having to pay that. And it's just a conversation that prior to this, and this is what got everybody in trouble. There wasn't probably much of a conversation about the buyer paying commission because it was a clear cooperation kind of forced situation where you had to, as a listing agent, offer something. And then it dwindled down and then it went away and here we are today. So, so then figure out as a buyer agent, does the buyer pay any, all, or none of the buyer agency fee? That was a great question that came in about, hey, if we want to reduce it, what do we do? Well, maybe you reduce it for that situation, but you don't reduce it on a buyer agency commission or buyer agency contract until you find out if that offer is accepted or not. Because then it becomes real and you can reassure your client that if you're taking less, that it's documented. So it's all about transparency, documentation, and that kind of thing. And then, of course, update buyer cost sheets with any changes. So just from what we've gone over, don't forget to get the bright disclosure, the consumer notice, and the exclusive or non-exclusive, Mr. Parentheses in there, agency contract before showing home to a new buyer every time, no exceptions. Have the commission conversations with your buyers and sellers. And I forgot to capitalize the B. You can tell I did that like 20 minutes ago. Early in the process every time. For buyers, get the CBC signed or in writing, meaning get a text, get an email, something that if the listing agent does not concede or agree that they said that they're offering something or tries to change it, you have something in writing. And that actually happened in one scenario. Before sending the offer, make sure your buyer costs are correct. And then use the CBC internally to ensure the expectations are the same for each agent. And then for the sellers, explain how offers will come in depending on their choices, if any, of offerings. So it's just a good idea to get those things signed. Pay attention to the new commission concession lines to reflect the terms and make sure everything's accurate, because that's also been a real world example where things were off. People were, other agents were not agreeing to abide by some of the terms. And for the most part, though, I think it's working okay. And with other agents, try to be kind and patient, but yet be firm with your representation. I know you all do. We have an awesome brokerage. And maintain the fiduciary confidentiality responsibility. So keep in mind what you're telling whom and how we do have that trust and that confidential requirement as a fiduciary to our clients, and keep that in mind. All right. So, you guys want to talk about what's going on out there?
Yeah, I'd love to open it up to questions or scenarios that maybe you've run into that you were not sure how to handle, because it's great for the whole room to learn from your individual experiences.
So I had a kind of experience that I wrote an offer and I called. They The agent said 2.5. And when I submitted the offer, because I'm not used to sending the co-broke right away, I usually send that in the second email. His TC came back and said it was 2.
Hmm.
Tammy confirmed, with her, like, no, the agent said it was 2.5. And at the end, it worked out because they did change it for 2.5. But the lesson there is that we really have to, number one, I made a phone call. I didn't get it in writing. For the most part, I usually just send a text, but this was a phone call, and I immediately started questioning myself. Like,
Hmm.
did I mishear this? I didn't have any proof. I went through text messages and it was definitely on a phone conversation. So I would tell everybody, even if you get it on the, even if they tell you on the phone, maybe it's a good idea for us to send a quick text. It was nice talking to you. I have noted that it's 2.5%, 3% commission. Just to follow up, just to protect yourself in the future. And then the second thing is, and this is a note to myself, is to send a co-broke with the offer every single time. Because this situation, it would have been my word against his. And I would have been down because I didn't have it in writing. So his TC was, said she confirmed it was 2%. And after I had a conversation with the agent, he went back and he said, it's fine, it's 2.5. But that could have turned into something else.
That could be some significant money too, yeah.
Right, right. So just remember to get it in writing and to send it, because maybe maybe it was 2% and he realized he misspoke. There's not necessarily that it was malice, but we just have to protect ourselves. And this is like such a new way of doing business. So try to get into that habit. The second thing is I just for the first time subscribed to Zillow leads, and I find it so awkward to have that document, to have them sign the first time I'm meeting with them. Other agents are saying that they love it, that they locking them in, but I'm more of a personable kind of agent, and I usually like meet people, have my buyer consultation, so I'm struggling with them. I am doing like a short term when I first meet them. This is because it's part of the rules, but I personally, out of this, all the changes, I'm struggling since I just started Zillow Leads, meeting those strangers and forcing that piece of paper. So I'm doing it very short term. I'm hoping that, I mean, obviously there's no way around it, but I am definitely struggling because it's such a like uncomfortable situation. Because a lot of these people, I have no conversations. Like they want to see the house at this time. I'm calling to confirm that that time works. I'm setting the appointment and I'm meeting them. So I'm personally struggling with that end, but I'm kind of like working around with it by doing a short term. And then once I convert them to my clients, then I'll lock them in.
So one of the things I heard from an agent in their business practice is that when they get, and it was for a lead response buyer situation, they have recorded videos.
It's funny you say that because I'm actually, once I'm done with this, that's exactly what I said I was gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, saying, hi, it was great. And if you do it real time, you can have one in the can that you can
Right,
shoot
that's
over to
exactly, I
them
was gonna
that
do like
just
a
says,
bomb type of thing.
yeah. And, or you can just create one. Hey, Damaris, it was great speaking with you. I look forward to seeing you at 123 Main Street. And, just to let you know, so when we get here, here's what to expect. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
Stuff
I'm
like that.
definitely gonna take that approach, to kind of make it less awkward when I get there. But the video thing is something that it's actually on my to-do list today. I'm gonna do that for every single Zillow lead that I get in. I'm gonna create like a generic video that when I reply to the lead, it's gonna send it to them.
A text with, links or other stuff too, or an email or something. This just kind of prepping them if you can't bring them in for a buyer consult too.
Yeah,
Is there anybody, what else is everybody else using?
Not all at once now.
Right, am I the only one that is doing Zillow right
Anybody
now?
have any buyers out there?
My team is having the phone conversation right now, but Damaris, I love your idea of the video. I think like I just wrote that down and I'm gonna go back to my team and talk to them about that. You know, I for the Zillow buyer leads that my team is working through, you know, they're having that initial phone conversation. If it's a real-time touring lead, they're still calling them ahead of time and just having the conversation, just kind of giving them a heads up, like, hey, when we arrive at the property, this is the case. Um, we did we did have one person, we showed up at the house and well, my agent showed up at the house and she refused to sign it and then still tried to get in the house anyway. So that was interesting. But you know, we take it with a grain of salt. But I love the video idea. I think that will help reiterate the point more than I think just talking over the phone would. So
And that is my biggest fear. Like, it hasn't happened to me, but in my mind, it has happened to me that somebody doesn't want to sign it while we're in front of the house. So I have that's like my ultimate fear right now. So I think my bearings is I'm thinking if we send this video and engage with this conversation before we get there, it would, you know, they don't feel so surprised. And then the short-term listing, the short-term agreement, so they don't feel locked in until they get to know my value and want to work with me. Because I also don't kind of like forcing people to work with you. That's not, I was the type of agent that I'm the type of agent, well, now it's changing, but I wouldn't do the buyer agency right away because I don't want to force them. Like, this is a mutual relationship. You want to work with me, you're going to work with me. So now I have to kind of change because of the regs, how I kind of do things. But with Zillow, I'm struggling the most because I'm kind of new to it and I'm like in panic that somebody's not going to want to sign and it creates an awkward situation in
Oh,
front
and
of us.
if you craft that conversation about, you know, the default too, like, hey, I understand if you don't want to hire me right now because you don't even know me. So why don't we do this for a couple of houses and I'll just put down the address. If you end up, you know, buying the house or being interested, I can help you. And if you want to see more properties, then we can do that. And then, like I said, whatever your tolerance is,
Mhm.
whether it's like 2 showings, 3 showings, whatever, but by that time, people should either trust you
No, yeah,
or look, they'll have another agent, right?
right. And,
So.
and with those online leads, they just may have several.
Well, that's the whole point about that, you know, understanding and I think that PAR envisioned it. And, you know, I know Gary, and thank you very much if Gary's on, UCO, he served on that task force and everything. And I'm sure that they were looking as far into the future as they could, as far as what to expect and anticipate. And I think that multiple contracts was one of them. And people don't understand what we do in a large part anyhow. And when you throw something like that on and they're like, you know, you can't just say, did you sign anything with somebody else? Oh yeah, I did. Well, that's okay. You know, maybe I can still show you a house. What'd you sign? I don't know. I threw it away, you know, or whatever.
Yeah,
That kind of-
it happens even before this. I just had an agent from the Harrisburg office send me an email that I have their buyers on the contract when I had these buyers on the contract since last year.
yeah.
Because buyers just get online and just start
And that's what
meeting
buyers
people,
do.
signing things without even realizing it.
Yeah. So what are some other questions that you guys have or other things that you're seeing out there? I mean, how are you finding it in our business practice, as far as um, other agents and what they're doing or what you found that's working for you? Anybody?
For me, I haven't found any pushback on, I have a few listings coming up. I haven't found any pushback from paying buyers compensation. I'm going through it the same. I'm going through my process the same way. I'm just explaining the contract a little different. And this is probably the first time in my life that I'm grateful for politics because that's all over the TV and we're not, and people forgot about it. So I'm getting no pushback on paying buyer compensation. I've had one conversation about it and the man was like, I'm willing to pay for it because I want this house sold quickly. So I haven't had any pushback on that. And then the other part, thankfully, Univision must not talk about it because none of my Spanish buyers ever bring it up. So the English ones bring it up in conversation, but no one has decided not to pay. So I don't want to knock on wood because watch tomorrow I'll get a seller who doesn't
Don't
want
say
to pay
that.
it. Right, but right
Don't
now
say it.
everything has been good, and every house that I've shown, every single agent is telling me what they're paying, so I haven't been on the other side of an agent not wanting to pay.
So let me ask you guys this. Are you feeling like it's getting super busy right now? Or is it slow? Or are you
Slow.
okay?
I'm regular. I feel that I should be super busy, especially with the rates going down, but I haven't, my phone is not ringing. I'm steady. I have like a few things on my pipeline, but not, I don't know. In my mind, I anticipated to be way busier when those rates started going down.
I'm
I don't know
finding,
about anybody else, but I don't feel it.
I know that the houses are still, if you book out more than 3 days in advance for a house and you do 10 houses that you're gonna look at, like at least 3 are sold in the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
What price point is that? Because I'm finding if the price point is, under 300, that would be the case, but over 300, 350, I see them sitting on the market longer.
They are lagging. I think over, and this is just my opinion, but I think over 300 from like 3 to 5, it becomes a conditional thing with the house, and it's very house specific. But I think if you get a house up in that price range right now and it's like perfect, then I think that's going to go in a couple of days. I don't know. I was just curious to take the temperature. It's not very often that I get to have, 20, 30 people on that are feeding feedback on the marketplace. So
I wanted to share something that Dave Hook had said in small group I think it was last week, and I thought it was really a great idea when we were talking about the lawsuit. How do you talk about the lawsuit? How do you explain to your clients, that kind of stuff? And he suggested, instead of talking about the lawsuit, bringing it up, why not just ask your clients the question, do you understand how compensation works? And have a conversation with them of how compensation works, instead of approaching it as we're on the defensive. Somebody said we did something wrong, so this is how we're trying to fix it. Let's just explain how it works and what they're comfortable with doing moving forward, whether it's the buy side or the list side.
I agree with that. I think there's no need to talk about it unless somebody brings it up. But if somebody brings it up, I think you ought to be well versed in being able to give a short version that tells it like it is, not that there was anything done wrong. And because it was just, they're attacking our business practice, or not attacking it. They were going after changing it. And but realtors were just doing what we've been doing for 100 years. But yeah, I agree. I don't think that needs to be part of the conversation, but I have had a lot of people ask me about it. Now, it's not in the news cycle right now because there's too many other things going on, but as soon as somebody it changes like a program or whatever for buyers, then it'll probably come back out again. But that's okay. I mean, we know what happened and we know how to create the best result for our clients. So that talking point shouldn't change.
I have a great class for that coming up. Bold.
I was waiting for Brittany to say I have a great book for that.
Yeah.
I probably do. Yeah.
But you guys have, Michael, Brittany, you guys have anything else to add or anything, or did we want to cover anything
Hey,
else?
Scott, it's Kim again. I'll just share real quick, because I did just have a listing and got multiple offers, and not one of the offers came in correctly on the agreement of sale on that line 3A, which you and I already discussed. But Yeah, so just really look at that line 3A. That is for compensation over and above what has already been negotiated on the co-op. So yeah, and I just feel like multiple other agents, other brokerages probably aren't trained as well and aren't just as knowledgeable as, you know, how that should read. So that had to be corrected multiple times on this listing.
I think there's I think there's a fair amount of agents that are just nervous about getting paid. So they're like, well, I'll just put it in 2 places. And, you know, if it, and that way I'm sure that I'll get it one way or the other, but you know, and so I think that's probably a learning curve that hopefully will shorten quickly. Okay, that's all I have.
Did everyone find this helpful? Would you like to see a follow-up session again in a month or two as we navigate these changes? Just trying to get a temperature check, because we know we offer a lot of training, so we don't want to overload you, and yet we want to make sure you're comfortable with all the conversations that you're having. I'm sure that we will be having these types of discussions too as we go through Bold, because Bold will be through October and November. So, you know, 2 to 3 months post the changes, I'm sure we might run into more hurdles and conversations by then. All right, I'm getting some chats here just saying, yes, helpful. Grateful that we're getting together. Following up in a month or so would be helpful. Looking forward to Bold. You're getting a lot of shout outs, Scott. Well, thank you so much for your time. See ya.
Yes, good seeing everybody. All
Thank
right.
you, Scott.
You have a great
Appreciate it.
day. Yep, have a nice
Bye.
week.
See ya.
Bye.